Marcy. Welcome to Wool Meets World, the channel where I explore everything yarny and beyond. I am thrilled and just this much nervous to present episode 1 of the Wool Meets World podcast. I'm not a yarn dyer or test knitter or any sort of professional knitfluencer or anything like that. I'm just a regular girl from New York City who loves to try different mediums, who loves to make different things, so I thought I would share that with you on YouTube. I have several things I want to talk about today. I have works in progress, I have objects that I've recently finished objects. I have plans for May that I want to discuss, and then I'm hoping to just add in at the end some of the media that I'm consuming, whether that's books, podcasts, movies. Those are kind of the things that you're going to see here on this channel. I know plenty of people whose job it is to talk to camera. That is not me, so forgive me for editing out some of the ums and ahs and stuff like that. And then I have my computer here off to the side, so forgive me if I just look at that to remind me of certain details. So with that, let's dive into works in progress. April has proven to be a bit of a challenging month for me. It's been high on stress, low on actual productivity, but you know what? That's perfectly okay. I feel like sometimes in knitting we push ourselves to get as many rows done in a single day as possible, and you know what? Sometimes it's just okay to not be having a good month and not really make a lot of progress on anything. You have my permission to do that at least. So with that in mind, the main project that I've had for April has been a pair of basic vanilla socks. I am calling these my Rainbow Bright socks because of the colorway, and I'm not really using any sort of pattern for this. I just know what works for me with a vanilla sock, so I'm making up my own pattern as I go along. So these are them. I'm knitting them 2 at a time on a super long size 1 cable needle, 2 at a time, and I've just come up past the heel and I am now on the leg. So the yarn that I am using, let me show you the balls, don't judge my messy balls. I split them in half. I basically weighed the skein when I wound it into a cake, split that right into 2 so that I can knit socks 2 at a time. And this color is, or this yarn is from Desert Vista Dye Works. And it's their sock weight base, self-striping, and you get 462 yards here, and it's in the 75-25 superwash merino nylon. And the colorway is Summer Rainbow. And I'm just loving the colorway so much that I want these socks to be highly, highly visible. So I think I'm going to take them to be super high, which is one of the reasons toe-up knitting is actually one of my preferred ways to knit just, you know, your basic vanilla socks. I basically started off with 12 stitches at the toe, increased until I just got up to 64 stitches. Again, I just know that this works for my foot. And then I started the heel about 2 inches before I got to like the end of my foot. If you just put a ruler right up to your foot, 2 inches before that is where you should stop your foot and start your heel. This heel that I did is called the Shadow Wrap heel, and I just recently learned how to do this heel. Looks pretty much the same on both sides, and it's now my preferred heel to work with. I used to do, you know, your regular gusseted heel and your standard gusseted heel, and I would always have to stop, remind myself of the steps, and it just felt like it took forever to get through that heel. So I recently stumbled onto Denise from Earth Tones Girl. She has a tutorial. Actually, she has 2 tutorials. She has one on how to do it with just your main color, and then she has another one on how to do it with a contrast heel, like I've done here. So I stumbled onto that tutorial, and I've not looked back. I don't have super like high arches or anything. I'm not really picky about the way socks fit my feet, so this heel works just fine for me. My husband does have high arches, and I've knit him a sock with this heel, and it seems to fit him just fine. He has no complaints about the way it fits or feels or anything like that. Once I got past the heel, I am just doing 64 stitches, going up the leg again. But I just think the colorway is so fun. I mean, it's just so bright. It's so fun. It reminds me of the cartoon Rainbow Bright from the 1980s, if you're too young to know what I'm talking about. It's a little girl. She wears these like rainbow knee-high socks, essentially. And so I think I may take these mid-calf or even maybe knee-high. We're gonna see how that goes. The second project that I'm working on, I'm actually not gonna show it to you because it is a mystery gnome along. It is the No News is Good News mystery gnome along from Imagine Landscapes. And I think as of the release of this video, we'll just be getting the last clue. And so I don't want to spoil it for anybody who's behind. I mean, in the past, I haven't been able to keep up. I'm keeping up now so far, which is great. But I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't kept up or who hasn't even started and looked at the pattern yet. And I think it's the first gnome pattern that Sarah has designed with self-striping yarn, which I was very excited about. This is a self-striping yarn kind of month for me, so it's very exciting. Again, my skein is all ugly, don't mind me. And this is the color that I'm using for my gnome. It's pretty dark when you knit it up. Actually, it looks kind of nice and light here, but it's a little bit dark when you knit it up. It's more of like a winter colorway, so I'm pairing it with a super bright contrast. But this skein is from Nomadic Yarns, and the colorway is Long Winter's Nap. It's actually a Tweety sock base, so you have the little like naps, or maybe they're called nips, I'm not sure. You have the little Tweety, you know, things in here, so when it knits up really Tweety. I don't know if you can tell, like they're kind of sticking out there. You can see it. So it knits up Tweety, so I'm doing this, and then I have my really bright contrast color. And that was a full skein that I, again, split in half. I actually gave half to my mom for her gnome. And then this, super bright neon pink. Maybe it's coming a little more red. No, it's coming out pink on the camera. This is from Avalon Springs Farm, and it's in their Pendragon base. It's a mini skein that I got from them in Rhinebeck. I'm pretty sure that they do small batch dyes, so you might not find this colorway again, but they definitely do sell online, and then I've found them in the past. Again, I said at Rhinebeck, and then I found them at the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival. And their yarn is really fun. It's all like King Arthur base, that they're called Avalon Springs Farm. So those are kind of the only two projects that I've been able to handle in April. I've had a garment on the needles, but I decided to rip it back because it just wasn't working out. And I am using it to do a different project. I'm currently swatching for it, but I'm going to talk about that in my May plans. Before we do that, let's talk about some finished objects. So at the beginning of the year, I was looking at my WIP unfinished object pile, and it's been growing and growing, and it was kind of bothering me a little bit. Normally I don't care about having a whole ton of languishing projects. It's more about what I enjoy knitting, but it was taking up space, and there were some projects in there that I was still really interested in finishing, but I wasn't, you know, creating the time to work on them. So I set a little intention for myself at the beginning of the year to finish 4 long-term works in progress and get them all done by April, and I actually did it. So the first project that I finished is this sweater that I am wearing. This is sweater number 18 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. It is a paid-for pattern that I believe you can only get on her website. And I knit a size small, which is 47 inches at the bust, and it includes quite a lot of negative ease. So for me, I think this is probably about 8 or 9 inches of negative ease. The pattern goes up to a size 56 bust, and I believe that's the actual circumference of the largest size of the sweater. It's super textured and it's really cozy and warm, a little bit too warm for this sunny spring day, but I wanted to model it and show you how it wears. I knit this in Blue Sky Fibers in the Woolstock base, which is their worsted base, and I think it's just 100% American wool. And then I held that together with Barocco Ariel, which is the silk mohair blend. The Blue Sky Fibers Woolstock is called Gravel Road, that's the colorway, and then the Barocco is Driftwood, and combined together it came out with this really nice like brown / gray, kind of grayish colorway. So you can see that the pattern is quite roomy. There's a lot of ease to it, and it has these really nice texture stitches, and they're just achieved basically by knitting and purling. The pattern itself is worked flat at the top and then connected in the round after the armhole split. So you basically start at the shoulders, connect front shoulder or front left and right shoulders, then do the same on the back, and then you'll connect at the underarms for knitting in the round. You then pick up stitches along the arm, and then you pick up stitches at the neck, and the pattern calls for a folded neckline. I didn't actually do that. I just did about 2 inches along the neck, and then I bound off in a tubular bind off just to kind of get that a similar sort of bubbly effect. The thing I love about Blue Sky Fibers is that the yarn comes in, or their Woolstock base specifically, comes in 150 gram skeins and then 50 gram skeins. So I was actually having a problem with my row gauge on this sweater, and I needed to do more pattern repeats along the body than what the designer called for, so I needed more yarn. And it just speaks to the color consistency of Blue Sky Fibers, because I bought the lion's share of this yarn several years ago, and then I just needed 150 gram skein to finish it off this January. So you can't really tell a difference in the dye lots here, which I think is great. The next project that I finished is this shawl. If I can get it, let's show it to you properly. This is the Whiteout Shawl by Melanie Berg. It's quite large, and it is knit kind of asymmetrical from this end, and then just increasing in stitches until you get to this lace panel here. The color, or the yarn that I used for this, is the pink is Cozy Colorworks in their fingering weight version, and the colorway is called Redwood. The white, which is in the stripe and then in these lace panels, is Oink Pigments, and it's their disco base. So it actually has a metallic sheen to it. I don't know if that's picking up. I'm not sure if it's picking up on camera, but to the naked eye, you can really tell that there's a metallicness to it. This is the colorway Birthday Suit. The pattern is written fairly easy. It's fairly easy to follow. You have your garter-row stitches. You have 1 chart for this lace panel here, more garter-row stitches, and then 2 charts for this last one. This is perfect for spring. I live in a kind of a climate where it's up and down. Yesterday was quite cold. Today is quite warm. So this is really nice to be able to just throw over your shoulder, or it'll make a very nice bandana if you just wanted something to cover your chest and neck. There's that. The third project I have is this beach bag. It's a crochet beach bag, and this is the giant shell stitch pattern, or the giant oh God, how do I say that? It's the giant shell stitch tote by Joanne Lowe, who is Craft Passion online, and this was a free pattern that you can get on their website. You can actually find it, the link to it on Ravelry, and I knit this using Wool and the Gang's Rah Rah Raffia, which is like their ribbon yarn. I checked online. I don't think you can get this kind of cobalt blue anymore. All I saw was a really dark kind of midnight blue and then a lighter blue. So I'm not sure if this color exists anymore. The pattern was really fun to make, and I actually don't consider myself like a great, you know, advanced crocheter, and I was able to do this no problem, thanks in part to Joanne's pictures that she includes on the website. It shows every step in great detail, particularly the shell stitch. So you start just by knitting the flat base in the round, and then when you get to the shell stitches on the body, you actually knit these back and forth. So you would start here, then turn and work the other way, then turn and work the other way, then turn and work the other way until you get the full shell, and then you would just slip stitch to the next base point and just keep going on like that with the shell. And then the handles are really sturdy because you are instructed to get these metal rings, and they are crocheted right into the trim, so it's really sturdy. The pattern does have you crochet handles in the raffia yarn, which I did, but after I did that, it just felt a little bit too itchy on my arm. This isn't the same raffia yarn that Joanne features in her pattern, so to me that was just too itchy, and then it didn't look quite finished to me, so I ended up buying these straps on Amazon, and they're, you know, probably fake leather on the top, and then a nice like woven fabric on the bottom. So it's quite comfortable, and then it just clips right onto the existing ring. So it's quite comfortable. The bag is huge. The bag is really big. It's perfect for taking everything you need to the beach. It actually fits like a giant, like extra large towel in it, and the towel is fully inside the bag. So you don't have a towel like sticking up and kind of poking you in the arm or getting in your way while you're carrying your stuff, and then you can obviously fit, I mean, anything that you need with this fun little beach bag. And then the last one I'll just talk about quickly because it's not knitting related, but I managed to sew a throw blanket. This is a quilted throw blanket, and it is the Triangle Fade Quilt by Lo and Behold Stitchery. I obviously modified it by not doing a fade. I just alternated white triangles with multicolored triangles in blues, browns, yellow, and pink. And it came out great. I have quilted stuff before in the past, but I really learned a lot by doing a kind of large throw. Here's the backing fabric, so everything in the front is reflected in the back. All the colors are reflected in the back with the exception of the yellow. And then the trim is this kind of irregular polka dot trim. I learned a lot with this. I've quilted things in the past, small items, and I really had to figure out how to shove a big throw size through my at-home sewing machine. You had to kind of like burrito it pretty well. And then the other thing I learned is that needles actually matter. Like you hear this all the time, use, you know, the appropriate machine needles for the fabric that you're working on. And it really makes a big difference. I mean, I was using a quilting set that I got at Joann's, and it had a smaller gauge needle for piecing, and then it had a larger gauge needle for actually doing the quilt, but these stitches just were coming out irregular. They were coming out in parts fine and then like too tight. So I actually learned about something called Microtech needles. Here they are. This is what they look like. And I think they are for working in like vinyls or maybe leather or something like that. So these actually did the trick when going through, you know, the backing, the batting, and then the front, the pieced front of my work. So the quilt actually turned out great, and I learned so much from it. So I'm really glad I finished those projects because now I just feel lighter. I feel like I have more space for things. I feel like there's so much more possibilities now that I got a lot of these projects out of the way. So with that, let's talk about May plans. So I mentioned earlier that I was working on a garment and it just wasn't working out. The pattern wasn't knitting up the way that I had imagined and I just was unsure about it. So I decided to completely scrap it. I ripped it all out and I'm now going to use the yarn for something different. And it is Galax by Andrea Gaughan Knits. And it is a cropped V-neck tank with some really nice lace details going up the front and the back. And it is knit in Knitting for Olive's Pure Silk. I'm going to replace that and knit it with a really nice indigo dyed linen that I got from Rhinebeck this past year. It's coming out a little bit dark on camera. It's a little bit lighter than this, but it's really close. I wish I had taken a picture of the booth that I had got it from, but I didn't. So I'm just going to show you the label, which is written in a different language, but it is, I would call this like a light fingering weight, and you get about 360 to, let's say 400, or 380 to like 490 yards per skein here. It's knit in that silk, so it's got a really nice like drapey aspect, so I'm hoping to achieve the same with this linen that I'm replacing it with. And it's a paid for pattern. It comes graded in 10 sizes, A through J, and the largest is gonna be a size 65 around the bust. It calls for about 0 to 2 inches of negative ease, so 2 inches smaller than the bust, and it's knit from the bottom up. I think I'm going to modify it a little bit. Instead of making it super cropped, I'm going to just probably increase the length on that and make it like kind of like a waist length top. And that is going to be my main garment. And then I'm actually going to sew up a garment. And I've already made my toile, so I can show you a bit better on what this looks like. So I am knitting the Seamwork Marlow top. It is a V-neck button-up top. This is my toile, my practice garment. If you're a Seamwork member, you can get the pattern for free. Otherwise, it is a paid-for pattern, I believe. So I just recently started to learn how to make clothes. I've been sewing bags and different home items for a while, and I was really excited when Seamwork came out with an absolute beginner sewing course, like learn to sew your own clothes. And it's great because it's absolute beginner. It teaches you like the fundamentals of sewing if you've never sewed anything before. So I really enjoyed that class, and I've done a couple projects already from that. So this is maybe my second top that I'm branching out, or second garment that I'm branching out on my own with, still doing the tutorials that I find on Seamwork. And this is teaching me a lot of things, actually. It's teaching me about the V-neck facings along the front. It's taught me how to do buttonholes, which is really fun. A fun thing to learn. Do the buttonholes. It actually is pretty easy with my machine. And then it's teaching me about split hems and the facings for that. So my goal is to knit, my goal is to sew like 1 or 2 garments to a month to kind of build up my skills and build up my own me-made wardrobe. Those are my plans for May, and one of the things I really love doing while I'm knitting, or particularly while I'm sewing, is I love to consume books. I either read a physical book and knit while I'm doing that, or especially when I'm sewing and I can't actually kind of focus on something, I can't focus like on a podcast or on a show, I love to listen to audiobooks. Let's talk about some of the books that I've been reading. So I finished 2 books in the month of April. The first one is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I think it was published in 2022, so it's been around for a little bit. It's been on my to-be-read list for a bit, and in the past I've had trouble getting the book, but I finally managed to get it from my library, and I really, really enjoyed this one. It follows the lives of 2 lifelong friends. I would call them almost platonic soulmates, and they are video game designers. It goes through their lives from early childhood through adulthood. It follows them through professional success, professional failures, and then some personal tragedies that happen. The beginning of the book really caught me because it references a lot of 1990s video games. It references the original Mario, Duck Hunt, Oregon Trail. So that caught me right off the bat with sort of like a little bit of nostalgia for my generation. And then, the middle chapters are fine. I really appreciated a lot of the power dynamics and issues surrounding representation. But to me, where the book really shines are 2 chapters near the end of the book that definitely covers some serious tragedy. So that's a trigger warning for you. Look that up if you're particularly sensitive to anything. But it covers these personal tragedies in such a different, unique way through the eyes of a gamer, I think. And I found it super interesting. I found it moving and really beautiful, and I can't get these 2 chapters out of my mind. It was definitely worth going through some of the, minute details that you had to go through in the middle of the book to get to that. So I actually read that while I was knitting my socks. Apparently I read faster than I knit because I'm not done with my socks, and I am done reading this book. The second book that I finished is another one that I've been wanting to read for a little bit, and that is Happy Place by Emily Henry. And I just learned that it was published like almost exactly last year. So that's really fun that I got to read it a year later. And I listened to this actually on audiobook. A friend of mine needed a book to read. She was kind of going through a tough time at work. And so I suggested that we read this one together. And it was great because the book kind of follows some friends that, were college friends, and me and my friend have known each other for much longer than that. But it was really nice to read a book about friends with your friend. It's also a lighthearted romance, but it does cover some issues that one might face. I would call it issues about personal identity, let's say, and kind of finding yourself and growing as a person and growing together and then away from certain people. And I just found it to be a really nice, easy, light read. Great romance. I found myself identifying with some of the characters and like wanting to be like friends and hang out with other characters. And then I found myself not liking, let's say hating, the behavior of some characters. So I always find that interesting when an author does such good character development that I end up hating a character. Like I just hate what they're all about. They irk me, and I just find that so fascinating. So I would definitely check out more of Emily Henry's books. I mean, she's been everywhere. So I'm really glad that I finally got to dive in, and summer is coming, and there's just something about summer and being by the pool that makes you want to just like grab a nice little spicy little romance or something really light to go along with the heaviness of the summer heat. So I'm really excited to tackle some more of those. So that's it for episode 1 of the Wool Meets World podcast. Give me a like if anything resonated here, or just let me know anything you want to hear more of or less of in the comments, and I'll see you for the next one.